having one of those days where everything felt a bit impossible, almost hopeless. So I was thinking back to when I was in college and what then I wanted to be when I grew up. And I remembered that I thought my dream job was a job where I wasn't always in an office, where I got to go out and meet different interesting people, where you're constantly learning and being challenged, and you're also helping people and communities. At the time, I couldn't imagine what that job was. And because I was studying business economics, I was following a path towards a career in finance. I was actually amazed then when I realised that that's the job I have, and even more so that I can now say what that job is to me, and it's social entrepreneurship. So when I was in my third year, I read an article about for-benefit enterprise. It really resonated with me because it spoke about the discrepancy between for-profit and not-for-profit organisations. How one is so strongly associated with greed and the other inefficiency. Why couldn't there be a middle ground? An organisation that could operate in a commercially viable and sustainable way, but still put community and people first. A social enterprise. It was then in my third year where I met Eva O'Brien, the co-founder of FoodCloud. She was studying environmental science and doing a thesis on surplus food redistribution. I was immediately intrigued by the concept. Globally, 30 to 50% of food produced for human consumption is lost across the global food system. That's 1.3 billion tonnes of food. We actually use farmland the size of China to grow food that is never eaten. How many people here live in a house where you eat the heel at the end of bread? Probably most people. But how many times have you gone into a sandwich shop or a supermarket and seen a sandwich made with the heel of bread? So what happens to all the heels of bread? This factory wastes 13,000 heels of bread a day. In America, they have 4 times the amount of food needed to feed the population. And people are always talking about having to increase global food production to feed the 9 billion people that are expected by 2050. The 1 billion people in the world that are hungry at the moment could be lifted out of malnourishment on a quarter of the food wasted by the US, UK and Europe alone. In Ireland, the retail sector alone wastes 87,500 tonnes of food annually. And there are 600,000 people facing food poverty. That's actually enough food to feed every hungry person in Ireland 1 meal every day. The problem is in accessibility to food, not in lack of production. We continued doing some research and found that there is a lack of infrastructure for surplus food redistribution in Ireland, in comparison with most Western countries. We saw an opportunity to act. We began, there's one food bank in Ireland. We began by organising for a local farmers market in Glasnevin, the Honest to Goodness market, that every time they had food left at the end of the day on Wednesdays and Saturdays, a local charity, Don Bosco, would go and collect the food. Because the market was only open on Wednesdays and Saturdays, they often had food that wouldn't be fresh for the next day of sale. And Don Bosco is a home for recovering drug addicts that houses 6 men and has a weekly food budget of only €100. This meant that they could reallocate their funding towards doing other activities. But we realised that this wasn't a sustainable or a scalable business model. So we did some more research and found an organisation in America that was using a technology to connect a network of businesses to a network of charities, making the process a lot more fast and efficient. We licensed their technology, which gave us an amazing opportunity and was basically the start of FoodCloud. So with this new technology, we set out in my final year with a lot of volunteers and walked around Dublin City Centre asking every cafe, bakery, restaurant to sign up. It was practically impossible. Months later, I think we had about 5 signed up and we decided to launch. Needless to say, it failed. 1 donation went up that was collected by 1 charity, and we realised that this was never going to work. But thankfully, we were given an opportunity by Launchbox, an accelerator in Trinity. This was when we really started thinking like a startup company. And the first lesson we learned was validate your concept. You can understand or you can know a problem exists, but understanding it is where the value truly lies. We visited 30 charities in Dublin City Centre and found out that the demand from them was for food from groceries, retail sector, not soups and sandwiches. So we decided to target the retail sector. So I got on the phone and just started cold calling every retailer essentially in Ireland. There was even one specific retailer that I had the phone hung up on me 6 times before I managed to somehow get through to the head of operations. Somehow then they sent us out to their flagship store to do a food waste audit, something I didn't even know existed before. So we went out in suits with clipboards and said, oh, we're here to do your food waste audit. Completely and utterly spoofing, as Diana said. And needless to say, we still haven't gotten these guys to sign up, but it's just an example of how you start off and you don't really know what you're doing all the time. But then in September, we finally got Tesco on board and we were able to launch our first pilot. We became a real company, did the whole memorandums and associations thing. Also had a big mess up there where we didn't get paid for about 4 months because we didn't realise it. We got a space in an accelerator launchpad in NDRC, and we were winners of the Arthur Guinness projects. So we finally had some funding and an office space. We expanded to a few other businesses and 11 different Tesco's and signed up about 35 charities in Dublin City Centre. When you're working in a startup, it can be a bit mad. I gave a presentation recently and I was talking about the highs and lows and how sometimes, you have a great day and the next day it's a terrible day. And then a guy went up after me and he's like a serial entrepreneur with lots of experience in this. And he actually described it as being bipolar. And when he said it, actually kind of felt sort of true. So it is a really kind of crazy experience. When we launched the pilot first, it didn't go great. There was an incredible amount of bread going up in the system. So much bread that charities just kind of stopped collecting it and said that there was far too much bread that they could handle. But we were desperate to keep Tesco happy and keep the charities happy. So we started filling our freezers with bread and eating every single possible variation of bread you can imagine. There's such thing as bread soup, by the way, don't try it. We even started making Christmas decorations out of bread. They turned out okay, I think. But then after some very bloated Googling, we found a headline in Australia that was talking about how an organisation similar to ourselves, the charities were actually overwhelmed by the amount of bread. So we got a bit of reassurance that it wasn't just us, that this was actually an international bread problem. And with every challenge there's an opportunity, but we still haven't found the opportunity with bread, so if anybody has any suggestions, please tell me afterwards. And then there's the really good days. So a few days before Christmas, I got a call from somebody working in Lily O'Brien's chocolates. They had 840 boxes of Lily O'Brien's chocolates that weren't going to make it to the shops in time for Christmas. And they were going to end up in a bin unless we could do something about it. In an hour, we had 16 different charities come to collect all these boxes of chocolates. On Christmas Eve, I got a text from a charity that had collected 25 crates of surplus food from their local Tesco. They were able to bring that back to their community centre that evening and text 60 of the needy families in the area to come and collect food so that they would have food on Christmas Day. It's things like that that really keeps you motivated, especially when you're eating loads of bread and in hopeless situations. It is very easy to be motivated by fear, and I like giving this piece of advice because you'd be surprised how easy it is to fall into it. Fear of letting people down, fear of everything failing. It's not a good idea. It leads to stress and sometimes absolute madness. Most things you fear will never happen. It's true. So, how have we done so far? So since our launch in September, we've redistributed 3.6 tonnes of food to a network of 35 charities. That's the equivalent of 9,000 meals and 12,000 in GHG emission savings. Metrics are important, especially in social entrepreneurship, to demonstrate the impact that you're having. And, of course, financial sustainability. So now that we've come to the end of our pilot with Tesco, we're in discussions with them about charging a fee for our service to make sure that we become a financially sustainable organisation and we don't have to rely on donations, as it is a lot of work. We realised this when we were targeting the retail sector because we can create a lot of value for them. We help them contribute to their communities in a meaningful and practical way, but also financial value and savings from the cost of waste disposal. But the vision is definitely the most important thing when you're running a social enterprise. Our vision in FoodCloud is to have an Ireland, and possibly a world, where no food goes to waste, where people are going hungry. It's that vision that will keep you motivated through all the difficult times. Everyone here has a great opportunity. There's more support than ever before for enterprise in general. There's loads of accelerator programs, there's startup weekends, and there's organisations like Social Enterprise Ireland. There's a huge community of startups out there, sharing, learning, supporting each other. Even the general public are getting more involved. There are crowdfunding platforms popping up all over the place, where ordinary members of the public can invest in your enterprise or contribute towards your social enterprise. I always thought of entrepreneurship as a kind of isolated career, but I was really, really wrong. It's a very welcoming and warm community. The world really needs more social enterprise, and there is increasing recognition of this, and therefore increasing support. Now is the opportunity to act, because there are so many problems that need to be solved. And if you don't believe me, you might believe Bill Gates. If we can find approaches that meet the needs of the poor in ways that generate profits for business and votes for politicians, we will have found a sustainable way to reduce inequity in the world. This task is open-ended. It can never be finished, but a conscious effort to answer this challenge will change the world. Thank you.